to the Recovering Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Charles Van Loucks. Today, I want to talk about having a social life in recovery. So, thinking back to, early on, um, my social life and my friends and all that stuff was pretty much my life, like before my addiction started and everything. And I think that those are kind of the roots when we think of having a social life. Those are kind of the roots or memories, that we go back to. But, I don't think that having a social life in recovery has to look the same necessarily. So early on in my recovery, I was very cautious. I wouldn't really take a lot of risks when it came to, you know, going to see some old friends and, this and that, because I was so I was so scared of going back, to that old life, relapsing, all that kind of stuff. Um, so for a little while there, I kind of isolated a little bit, right? I didn't have much of a social life, which isn't good either. You want to try and find like a happy medium there. But I think, a good place to start with having a social life in recovery again, try going to some meetings. Now here's the thing, it's not necessarily about the meeting itself. That's a helpful tool for some people, maybe not as helpful for others, and that's okay. But there's a social component to it as well, right? Like people will go out and have dinner or get coffee or something like that after a meeting, right? All the different fellowships, right? AA, NA, HA, all those, they all have their own like social activities that they do as well. So for example, every holiday they're doing something, because for a lot of people in early recovery, the holidays are super triggering. They might not have family anymore, right? They may have been, kind of pushed out and, you know, so that can be kind of a triggering time. So really kind of rallying around the fellowship and getting into some of those fun activities that they have can be super helpful. There's like softball, for example. There's sober softball leagues. There's a lot of different stuff in that realm. Uh, so for me, early on, I think it was important for me to slowly begin to prove to myself that I was different and the social situations that I'd be going to were different, right? I think to some degree I had a lot of social situations kind of built up in my own mind and kind of psyched myself out a little bit, you know? So, for example, going to a concert, right? I waited a year. Once I hit a year clean, and that was just kind of my personal preference, like what I felt comfortable with. Once I hit a year, I felt comfortable kind of returning to that world. And I brought a support person, my brother, with me. And, I wore a big old, 100% sober right on my t-shirt. And, I felt that that was a good like shield to have up returning to that environment where, it had been dangerous for me in the past, concerts, festivals, all that kind of stuff. And I think having those tools on my side were helpful in getting back to having a social life again. But what I found, after my first couple of concerts, I found that it wasn't quite as triggering as I thought it was going to be. I had built it up a little bit in my mind, I didn't run into, people selling and trying to sell to me and all that kind of stuff. And I think the difference in my mind looking back on it now was in my active addiction, I found those people. I sought them out, and I think maybe that's why it was so prevalent for me, and so yeah, so I think it's very much about perspective and kind of how we go into a situation as well. But to be clear though, early on, like if you're in early recovery and you're still kind of, feeling triggered, having cravings, that kind of stuff, and somebody invites you to a house party with some old friends that you still use with or something, that might not be the best environment, right? Like I think a good rule of thumb just for me is, what type of situation am I getting into, right? Like, are we all going to a place and focusing on drinking or using, or are we going to some social thing where that's not the focus? I think that that can be, kind of a big part of where that line is for me, because, part of my story was also in the pool hall, and I had to sort of reclaim that for myself. And that's a big part of my life today, my social life. I shoot in an invitational pool league every week, and it's fun. I love it. It's a good way to meet some people and be social and all that. But this pool hall has a bar in it, so it's very much about reclaiming these things for our lives. And sometimes it takes time, right? Like, I didn't just jump right back into a pool hall with a bar, for example, and just start shooting in a league early on. I started off, I went to, it's called Jason's Billiards here in Colorado, and it's a big pool hall. They have a bunch of other table games and stuff like that too. There's no bar though. So it was an important step for me to start there so that I could, remember why I loved the game and why I liked to, be out and be social in those kind of environments and everything. And I had a support person with me, and we'd play some pool and remember why we enjoyed it and kind of build our way up from there, So by the time that I felt, comfortable enough to, go back to that same pool hall, um, I had kind of a system in place. I went with a support person, but the first time I went, I would just go up to the ball counter, grab some pool balls, and go to a table, and that was it. Because in my old life, right, I would go to the ball counter, get some balls, grab a shot and a beer, and then go to the table, right? So I almost kind of had to like retrain my brain a little bit, right? So then over time, I would, get the pool balls, and then I'd get a cup of water, right, and then go to the table, and then I would do the pool balls and an Arnold Palmer, and then go, right. And now it's like I don't even think about it. It's not even um, it's not even a triggering craving kind of thing anymore. Because I'm there for the pool. I've refocused that social kind of situation to serve me. And I think this can be done with other things too, so when you think about having a social life again, I would say just take it slow, try it differently, make sure that the sort of purpose of why we're going out to have fun, make sure that it doesn't revolve around substances or drinking or bars, or same with people, right? I think that if we get into some of our old crowds, that can be triggering and tough as well. And at the same time, I know it's tough to let go of some of those old friends, and I think that it's the way that I kind of looked at it is, I have to protect my recovery better than I ever have before, right? I'm the only one that can, so that led to some overcaution, right? And also, I think with my friends, it led me to a point where I had to really closely examine some people, some friends that I had, some old friends, and see, who were truly good friends, right? And who were, just using friends or drinking buddies and, that kind of stuff. I think that was a really important step for me, and I've been able to reconnect as well with some of my old friends, and some of them are in a better place, so, and they're good supportive people and all that stuff. So um, kind of being really honest with yourself about that, because the the way that situation can become dangerous is like, let's say you go to that party, right? And it's like, oh my God, this is my best friend ever, and they're so supportive and this and that. But they occasionally do some drugs, and some of their friends do some drugs, right? If you're in that situation, let's say your friend, your close friend, is there with you. They know you're sober, right? And let's say they decide to be sober with you. Super cool, right? But what about the other people there, right? You could be in that trusting, fun kind of environment with your friend who you know and trust, and all of a sudden some other person could pull out a sack, right? And in that moment, we don't necessarily want to test ourselves. You know, what's the point in testing ourselves in that situation? So if we feel that it could potentially be dangerous, don't do it. That's my opinion. Find a different activity. Like if you want to connect with that friend, you know, you could say, hey, you know what? I really would love to get together and do something fun, but I don't think a house party is the best environment for me. Let's go play some golf, right? Let's go shoot some pool, whatever it is. And I think sometimes that can be a really good, you know, helpful place. Because for me, early on as well with my social life, I kind of had some social anxiety going on for a while. I was feeling, like everything was turned up to 11, just kind of uneasy sometimes in social situations. So I found myself gravitating towards, different games and activities and whatever at those certain places. So I found that to be pretty helpful. And, having a person there with me who knows, that I'm feeling kind of, nervous in that situation. And, we can, go and play a game together or go chat or go walk around or, whatever it is. So I think just kind of leaning in on those kinds of tools can be helpful. Um, there's also a really great app that I've utilized a few times. It's called Meetup. And Meetup is interesting. It uses your GPS and it says, okay, you are here in Colorado, and the nearest, group to you of a certain activity you want to do is, right over here, half mile or something. And they meet every Wednesday at 4 p.m., whatever. Um, so they have a lot of interesting, like you can search anything on there, right? It's not just recovery groups. So like, for example, I used to work out in LA, and when I was out there, I used that app to kind of get a little more comfortable with my surroundings and meet some people and that kind of stuff. So a group that I partook in out there was they would meet at a park and they'd play a game of dodgeball and then have like a quick workout together and then go about their day, sort of thing. And it was really cool. I met one of my really good friends, Richard, right? He's been a friend ever since. I met him through that. And then I also did like a recovery specific one here in Colorado, which was a group of sober people. This was also off Meetup. So they have sober specific ones too. But it was a group of sober people who would meet up and go to a pool hall and play pool together, and hold each other accountable and kind of be that support and, just kind of meet some new friends who liked playing pool as well. So it's a really fun way to, you know, meet some people who automatically have shared interests with you right off the bat, you know. So give it a shot. If you're feeling like you want a little more social interaction in your life and that kind of stuff, I think that can be a really good place to start. And, if you're feeling pretty, uneasy or anything, you can do recovery specific ones too, just to be sure and all that if you like. But there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of good supportive people out there, whether they're in recovery or not. 9 times out of 10, when I talk to somebody about me being in recovery, they usually say positive things, and it's usually like, oh, Uncle Bob's in recovery, or we, should be, or whatever. Like everyone has a connection to it. So I haven't met one person who said something, negative about, me being in recovery or sharing that or anything like that. So um, keep that in mind too. If you feel like you're isolating and you're feeling lonely and that kind of stuff, it might be a little built up in your mind as well, and it might be worth disproving that to yourself safely, right? Bring a support person, right? Don't jump into a dangerous environment or anything like that, but it might be worthwhile doing that. Even just like sitting in a coffee shop with somebody and talking and just like feeling normal again, that can help. So yeah, try to not build up the whole social life thing too much. And it's absolutely possible to have a fun social life in recovery for sure. Coming up on 10 years, and I definitely have a fun social life, like I talked about the pool leagues and all that kind of stuff. And um, I think that it's worth exploring, getting back to that good, positive side of life that we kind of missed out on for a while in our active addictions. Um, and yeah, if you're ever feeling like, truly down and lonely and isolated and you just need some people in your life, go to a meeting, you know, and you don't even have to share. You don't have to whatever. You could just sit there and listen. Right. But the important part is after that meeting, I want you to talk to somebody, whoever you relate to, whoever had an interesting share, whoever seems nice, whatever, pull them aside and tell them, dude, I'm fucked up. I'm early on. Like, I'm feeling lonely. I need some help. Right. They will absolutely help you. They will do everything in their power to help. Right. You'll be invited to go get some food afterwards. Right. They'll call you to come over on the weekends and do something fun. Like, there's a lot of good support there. We just have to make sure that we're not too closed off from it and that we're not isolating too much so that we can't see it, because it's there for sure. So, and you can also leave, comments on here, and, people will respond and, get you linked up with local people in Colorado and all that kind of stuff too. So, yeah, if you have any questions about, any of these resources that I've talked about, or how to handle a particular social situation or, whatever it is, post a comment, or also have my email in here, and you could email me more privately if you prefer, and we can talk that way. But yeah, it's definitely a fun, important piece to, rebuild a social life in our lives, because think about it. There's a reason why isolation is a punishment in prison. So let's make sure we build up that social life. All right. Thanks, guys.